When did your gut feeling of something's not right here save you? Worked as a shot girl at a pub. One night I rejected someone who attempted to get my number. Not unusual, and he didn't seem that bothered. The whole exchange wasn't strange to me. In the early hours after the bar closed, I went to leave through the back door into the car park like usual when I saw the sensor light outside was on. Someone was stood just outside the door. I felt uneasy, so went out the front and asked one of the bouncers to walk me round the back to my car. As we rounded the corner, we spotted this guy lurking outside the door holding his belt like a makeshift garrote. When he saw us, he started screaming that I was a ducking itch and I should die. He scampered off into the road and never came back. I woke up at 3 AM once sitting upright in bed. I felt on alert and my heart raced when I saw that my cat was on alert too. Wide awake by my feet with his ears perked up. But I didn't see or hear anything weird. Something didn't feel right and I couldn't relax. So I got up and went to the kitchen. Turned on some lights and ate food even though I wasn't that hungry. Eventually went back to bed. We discovered the next morning that someone had stopped while in the process of using some kind of tool to silently cut a big hole in the glass window in the living room. Right next to the bedroom. I think the lights I turned on scared them away. Edited to add that we had 3 long years of issues with our neighbors. They repeatedly came into our property and were pissed that we put up a 9-foot fence to keep them out. This attempted break-in happened right after the fence went up and 2 days before they all moved out. Glad those pieces of shit are long gone. Went to a college party and one of the guys made me feel very uncomfortable. He didn't ever do anything to me. But something seemed off. I kept dumping my shots because getting smashed seemed like a bad idea. I ended up taking a friend and leaving while he told us that we were being lame by not having more of the Grey Goose. He raped another girl at the party that night. I had a similar experience in college. I went to a frat party at another school and just got a really bad vibe. The guys had a separate bowl of punch for girls, which wasn't that unusual in itself, although maybe it should be, and I noticed some of the girls seemed off way too drunk, so I helped them get out of there. Warned the other girls at the party. And called campus security on the frat. It turned out that a bunch of girls were roofied at the party and had to be hospitalized. It all got swept under the rug and there were no penalties for the fraternity as far as I know. I'm a firefighter. We got called out to a tree fire started by fallen power lines. We pull up in the truck and I'm trusting that my driver and crew leader are doing their job and have good situational awareness. We get out of the truck and we're parked next to a set of power lines, not fallen. It's a very windy night and I can see the lines swinging, so I voice my concerns to my crew leader who says it'll be fine. We get out, hose out, risk of the tree fire catching onto a house outweighing potential risk of arcing, plus the line disconnected when it fell, and I'm on the branch ready to start putting it out with 2 others near me when I get a chill. I look up, see the line swinging violently and yell, "Everyone ducking, move." As the 3 of us sprint and dive out of the way, we hear a thwip and crack, and sure enough the line we were under came loose and stayed connected to the power pole. If I hadn't got that chill, chances are we would have had 3 fried fireys. Had a friend who said we should go to this party he was invited to by a classmate of his. We ended driving out to it. We noticed the neighborhood was not too pleasant and sketchy. We saw that house had some lights on in backyard but kind of quiet for a party. I decided that we should not go since something felt really off. Friend ended finding the classmate that invited him got robbed and threatened when he went to party. It ended up being a fake party. When I was in middle school and around 14 years old, I was returning home. I live like 5 minutes away from said school and I noticed there was a man following me. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his phone and he wore a cap, so I wasn't able to see his face fully. Anyways, he gave off this weird vibe. I reached my apartment building and the guy was still behind me. I know mostly everyone who lives in my neighborhood and I couldn't recall him. Last moment I decided I wasn't going to go inside the hallway. I turned around and went to a store where I waited for my mom to come. A few weeks after, there was some news about an 11-year-old girl from my school who was raped in the building right behind mine 2 days after the incident. The guy they caught looked a lot like the guy who had followed me, and given the time frame and the proximity, there's a high chance that it was him. My daughter was 1.5 years at the time. She had a cold. But bedtime went off without a hitch. I woke up in the middle of the night that night. Really uncomfortable and anxious. Something was off and I couldn't put my finger on it. I got up. Had a midnight snack. Tried to calm my nerves. I decided to check on my kids, who shared a room. Before trying to go back to sleep, I get in there and immediately I hear a light sound coming from her crib, wheezing. It was so quiet. There was no way to hear it outside of the room. I took her to the hospital, where she ended up with an overnight stay, oxygen, and nebulizer treatments because her oxygen had dipped. She was diagnosed with reactive airway disease due to the cold, which triggered the asthma attack. At age 5 I was almost abducted by strangers at the park who had a bunch of toys on a blanket and tried to lure me into their motorhome. I looked back to my dad, who was talking to his friend maybe 100 yards away. I got a tummy ache when one of them tried to coax me by reaching for my arm to lead me away. And I screamed and ran like hell back to my dad. Years later I found out those same people had abducted other kids who weren't so lucky. Never ignored a gut feeling since. Thanks for all the positive feedback. And for your information, trust me, once my dad got over the shock he let me have it for not only wandering off but speaking to complete strangers. I talked to my mom a bit about it today and she told me my dad broke down and blamed himself. Positive outlook on this though, guys. This is just one instance, scary as it may be, where my gut led me in the right direction and my instinct for danger is now uncanny. I truly believe everything happens for a reason. I trusted my instincts and it kept me safe, still does. Not me, but when my mum was a teenager on the 18th of November 1987. She was going to London to visit a friend. It was around 7:20 PM and she decided she was going to take a taxi instead of going by tube because it didn't feel right. King's Cross Tube Station. 10 minutes later the whole station caught on fire and 30 out of the 40 people died. If she had decided to take the tube she would likely have died. Well, I was walking home. Wasn't late and I'm from a pretty safe area, but it was that time of year when it starts to get dark really early, so felt kind of ominous. Anyway, I pass this guy in a red sweater and red tracksuit bottoms and he looks at me funny. Maybe he's high. Maybe he's drunk. Either way, something not quite right about him. I keep going. Look behind me. He's still there. Cross the road. He crosses with me. As soon as I turn a corner I sprint to my apartment complex and run into the coded gate and wait. He rocks up a minute later and stares at me through the gate. He just stares at me for a good 10 or so seconds, then runs back the way he came. Shivers. Posted this before. Took my 2 babies to an in-home daycare run by a lovely woman. About 9 days in, the woman's teenage son was home when I picked up my kids. He gave me a super creepy vibe. Pulled the kids from the daycare and placed them elsewhere. Maybe 10 years later that kid murdered 2 people, then killed his mom. Some dude get off the bus at the same stop as me. It's about 8 PM and October, so it's quite dark out already. He had spoken to me on the bus. One line about nice weather. Anyway, he gets off the bus after me. I cross the road and make a mental note of him walking the opposite way to me. I make sure to watch him walking away. Something in my gut says not to trust him. To get to my house I have to walk up a hill with a path alongside a high stone wall. It is secluded. Usually I listen to music as I walk. I decide not to this time. I'm about halfway up when I get this awful feeling. I take out my phone. Dial my mother's number, and as I do I hear fast steps of someone running up behind me. I know it's the guy before I turn around, and as I do he is literally running full speed towards me. I look him dead in the eyes, ready to fight for my life. As I do this, my mother answers her phone and I say, "Hi mom." He slows right down to a light jog and says evening as he jogs past me. I ask my mom to stay on the line. Her BF comes out to meet me at the top of the hill. The guy's nowhere to be seen. He was definitely running up behind me to strike me, and by turning to face him I'm certain it threw him off. Was at a party in a rough neighborhood. I made a lot of poor choices as a teen. I'm vaguely aware of an argument going on somewhere else in the house. I couldn't put a finger on it, but tension was rising. I decided it was time to go. I grabbed my friends and left. Not 10 minutes after we left, someone pulled a gun and fired a few rounds. Some random girl was hit, non-fatally. Anyway, someone stole someone else's coke. So the guy left. Came back with a gun. Threatened some people. Then lost control of the situation and shot some poor girl. Edit, since apparently there's some confusion. The coke in question was coke. Someone came into my work that gave me the I'm in danger feeling. I work in a place where 60% of my customers are children, and I naturally get very protective of them. But you can't call the police because someone's creeping you out. He kept getting close to children but not doing anything or even making them uncomfortable, so there still wasn't anything I could do. He leaves and I shrug it off. Another customer soon comes in and gives me the same feeling. So I'm thinking I'm just anxious today. He's talking about Donkey Kong and stuff. Casual conversation. Then he says I'm best friends with Martin Bryant, the spree killer from the 1996 Port Arthur massacre, who is in solitary confinement and can't even interact with whoever has to throw his food at him. So I'm getting a bit nervous now. Then the first creepy guy comes in. And the one I was talking to says I know him. We went to prison together, so immediately I start having a panic attack and have to end the conversation as quick as possible so I can contact the manager to say I need someone else to come into the store. I was there alone. And they immediately call the police. Turns out they were both registered sex offenders. Neither were allowed anywhere near my work because it's too close to the CBD. And they're legally now allowed near anywhere that could have children there. I actually recently went to court for this. Waited hours to go in and he pleaded guilty at the very last second. Bastard. Edit, I offered way too many details and now I'm super uncomfortable with everyone guessing where I work. I've had terrible experiences with people finding out where I work and I'm a bit spooked. Not me but my dad. I was too stupid to listen to him. I used to live on the roughest council estate in my hometown when I was very young. Very dangerous for anyone, let alone kids, so for that reason my parents rarely let me outside unless I was with other kids being supervised or within sight of my parents. This story is regarding the latter one. I wanted to go to the nearby park but my dad said no as there were some rough people over there and that I could only play outside on the steps to our flat building, which I agreed to although I had no intention of doing that lol. As soon as I went outside I went right to the park and began playing. I kept glancing over at the two people and noticed them constantly looking over at me, which made me nervous, but I was like 5 years old so cared more about fun than my own safety. Anyway, the two people approached me. They'd been drinking and cornered me by a fence when I tried to run. They grabbed a hold of me when out of nowhere I heard my dad shouting at them. He ran over and it's the only time I ever saw him get physical with anybody, but he handed their asses to them whilst screaming obscenities at them for putting their hands on his son. He grabbed a hold of my arm and dragged me back home, all whilst swearing at me for being so stupid. I got a good hiding over that and was grounded for weeks. Years later I asked him about it and he told me that he just knew that I would go to the park so followed me to keep an eye on me. He didn't expect anything to happen to me, but when it did he went mental. There's been a few times where I hadn't listened to my gut, but one sticks out where I did. I used to live in a smaller Minnesotan town down near some train tracks and a bike running path that extends out of town into the woods. One evening I'm sitting outside on my porch drinking a couple of beers with my buddy. Two dudes walk up on us kind of out of nowhere and immediately something seemed off with them. It's a college town and drunk people come up onto your porch a lot or randomly just say hello on their way to or from the bars downtown. But these dudes had a badass vibe to them. I had a little black Louisville Slugger lying next to me on the porch, so I grabbed and just held it across my lap. One dude asks us, "You guys got an extra smoke?" Buddy says nope. The other guy comes up real close almost onto the porch and says, Did you see my face? I just kept looking forward but not directly at him and just said nah man, we didn't see anything. He said something like good. Lil punkas, and they both walked away. 2 nights later I'm sitting in my living room with the same buddy and the local news is on. 2 guys arrested for robbing and stabbing a man a couple nights back on the trail down by the train tracks next to where I live. My buddy had looked at their faces coming up and I had seen the dude clear as day that had asked for the smoke. It was those same ducking guys. Was riding my motorcycle with a friend on the back. We were going down a country road behind a truck hauling a bunch of old car tires when all of a sudden I decided we shouldn't be there. So I slowed way down to let the truck go ahead of us. Just as I did, one of the tires fell off the truck and landed right where we would have been. Was hunting for early morels and king bullets last May up near Clay Elm. No luck. So went further over towards Hancock. About 2/3 RDS up a hillside I felt like I was being watched. I slowly realized that I couldn't hear any animals making noise. Hackles raised. I immediately started down the most direct path to my car. 1 trail above where I was parked I saw a partial juvenile male deer skeleton under a large conifer. As I double timed it past, I looked up and saw the rest of the bones and sinews slung up in the branches. Out came the knife and I slowed down, turning and scanning every few yards until I got into my car and booked it out of there. The next day 2 mountain bikers were attacked by a cougar and 1 was held very near to the area I was hiking. I carry a handgun now for my mushroom hunts. I had something like this one time in elementary school when we had a recess. It was pretty average and we left at the normal time, but it just felt very off to me. But because I was 8 and didn't have common sense yet, I brushed the feeling off. Turns out that there was literally a guy had been scoping out the playground for kids to lure to him for a while in a stereotypical large white van. Was at a farmer's market in downtown Chico, CA with my wife. I'm tall and white and my wife is Asian and vertically challenged. And over the crowd I saw 2 very rough looking gentlemen. One really tall and the other short with a swastika tattooed on his forehead like Charles Manson. Little tattooed man and I made eye contact from maybe 50 feet away and he gestured to his friend and then he pointed at me. I alerted my wife and told her that we were leaving immediately. She thought I was majorly overreacting and wanted to continue shopping. But I overruled her and we left. Maybe 6 months later we were watching America's Most Wanted and guess who showed up for double murder of meth in Oroville? CA, my 2 buddies. We still talk about that from time to time and it still gives me goosebumps 15 years later. First time was 3 weeks after getting my gallbladder out. I felt terrible, I still had a drain in my stomach. I called my sister and said I'm afraid I'll be dead tomorrow. Went to the emergency room and turns out the surgeon had nicked my liver and I was bleeding internally. It turned into a blood blister on my liver and if it popped I would have bled to death. Second time I had been feeling like someone was squeezing around my chest for months. I passed out one morning. Went to the hospital and they found a tumor between my heart and lungs. Turned out to be cancer. A couple surgeries and chemo and I've been in remission almost 5 years. I was in Turkey for vacation when I was about 7 or 8 years old and I made friends with some other tourists but also some locals. All around the age range of 8-16. These 2 local guys were about 16. And at one point during the late afternoon they asked if I wanted to go with them to go kart outside of the hotel area. And I agreed. Approximately 30 seconds of walking along with them. I got the most chilling feeling I've ever had in my life. All the hairs on my skin rose up and I had this super uneasy feeling deep in my gut. It actually felt like some supernatural force was beckoning me to dip. I turned on my heels and sprinted so fast to get back to the hotel. I didn't even look back. When I returned, my mother asked where I had been. I told her I was taking a rough sheet. Oddly enough, I was quite fond of those guys before this happened. But thinking about this in retrospect, why would 2 local 16-year-olds have any genuine interest in go-karting with a young 8-year-old tourist? I feel like I may have dodged a bullet. We may never know. I am a petite woman. And was 19 at the time. Had a late shift that ended at 10 p.m. Hit the grocery before my walk home. About 10 blocks. I've got arms full of groceries and notice a car drive past me in the opposite direction. Heard it pull a U-turn behind me and park. I tell myself, probably just getting home from work too. But then I hear footsteps behind me. I turn around and it's a man in his 30s. I'd guess. He doesn't say anything, but stops walking when I stopped walking. I keep walking. Bit faster now and I can hear him speed up too. I turn around again and say, "Hey man. What's up?" He says nothing. I turn around and keep walking. Almost at a mini jog pace and I hear him speed up too. I was about 4 blocks away from home. The adrenaline kicked in. I dropped my bags and booked it. Made it home. Told my boyfriend what was happening. As he goes outside to find the guy. Dude drives by in his car. Right past my house. We call the cops. Give them a description and the operator tells us they've had other calls about the same guy. Really hoping he never actually caught someone. Really hoping his creepy as wound up in jail. Really happy I listened to my gut. I live in Southern California and growing up living by the beach I would go surfing a lot. Almost every day during the summer with my buddies. One day I wanted to go but no one else could go so I decided it was fine and I would go by myself. Not a huge deal, I've gone surfing alone in the past and there are always other people in the lineup to hang around. Anyway. I get to the beach and when I paddle out I noticed there wasn't anyone out yet. More waves for me. I thought. But after a while something just felt off. I don't really know how to explain it but it was a very eerie feeling as if I was being watched. I don't think I've ever felt such an acute feeling like that before or since then but I just listened to my gut feeling and paddled in and went home. The next morning a swimmer died at that exact beach from a great white shark attack. I haven't been surfing since and that was 10 years ago. So I politely rejected a guy who asked me out randomly once at a bus stop. He was perfectly civil and not unattractive. He took no for an answer graciously. But I just got a really bad vibe for whatever reason and decided to take a bus in the opposite direction at the last second straight to my boyfriend's house to get away from him. Reading the paper a few days later there was a really awful, brutal animal cruelty incident right around that intersection. Don't want to get any more specific for the sake of anonymity, and the suspect's sketch description looked almost freaking identical to the bus stop guy. Who knows how he treats women if he mutilates animals. I still get really uncomfortable thinking about it. Was hiking by myself, real smart. I get this feeling that something wasn't right. But I normally act on that feeling. That day however, I ignored it. Went to look out. Turned around and headed back. About the same place as I got the feeling I noticed cougar tracks cross mine in the snow. They followed mine for a few meters and then went to a bit of shrub that overlooked both where I was now and the lookout. I immediately left and avoided going anywhere near something that would give a cougar cover. Occasionally behind me I would notice a small rustle in the bushes and trees or some snow falling off a disturbed branch. I was like 5 or 6 when my mum and sisters wanted to go for a drive out of town. I cried and cried because I just didn't want to go with them for some reason. And decided to go with my other sister in her car. Turns out, my mum and other sisters ended up crashing. And they said if you were in the car, you would have had to sit in the middle. And you would have died. Luckily my fam was okay though. But I sure did feel really cool after that. When I was 7, my dad was considering taking me to the midnight premiere of The Dark Knight Rises. But got a really bad feeling. Decided it was too late of a night for a 7-year-old. And we stayed home. We woke up the next morning. He turned on the news. Or a shooting was plastered on the screen. Sad. Really?